Hello, good morning. Welcome along to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
Hey, we're back on a beautiful Tuesday morning,
Good.
right?
I was waiting for that word.
Waiting for that word, we're back. Oh,
you.
come on. How?
It just came out. It just came out. Well, it's a beautiful Tuesday morning for me in Lagos. I'm Kayode.
What are you waiting for next now?
Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. Good morning, I'm Ayo Makinde. Welcome to the show.
Oh, that's all.
Yeah?
Well, okay. What's new? What's new is that it's like how many days now after the suspension?
It's like Tuesday today.
Interestingly, I've lost count.
That will be, well, on the average, that's going in the region of 30 days or so.
30 days.
Come see, come I'm not quite sure. I think it was June 8th or thereabout. And if we did, I did the calculation on Saturday. And it's gone to something in the region of 40 billion naira. That, according to that, the net blocks tool, Nigeria has lost to that suspension. And so when I juxtapose that with what the CBN governor said yesterday at the UNILAG convocation, when he's advocating that young people should embrace the digital space in the name of entrepreneurship and all of that, the natural question that comes to my mind is there really a sustainable environment for the young people to do what they need to do? Because certainly, if we are asking the young people to embrace entrepreneurship, the natural place they're going to go will be the digital space. Now, will they be free enough to always express themselves the way they really, really feel in the digital space?
Free enough to always express themselves?
Free enough to always express themselves.
I think that does free enough to always express themselves.
Well, that would be the assumption, okay? But then sometimes when you juxtapose these things with some of the things that happen and you're wondering exactly what is happening here. Well, I mean, the jury is out there on sometimes on to what extent is free speech, but we'll come to that. To use it for making money, that tool by NetBlocks, which engages some instruments from the World Bank and the rest of them, identifies, some of these things. And then I'm just wondering, exactly how far are we willing to embrace entrepreneurship, especially for young people to embrace entrepreneurship in their primary space, which is the digital space?
So maybe I'm going to stick my neck out here this morning and talk about, you mentioned digital space, but I think with the trend we've seen over time, it has made digital space seem like the next step to take when you want to be an entrepreneur. So
yeah.
Let me see how to put it. They think you need to go to Twitter, Instagram, and do what you need to do, forgetting that there are levels before you get to that point. Essentially, the social media is meant to be some sort of advertisement platform if you're doing business. People use it for different reasons these days, but we're sticking to business and entrepreneurship. It's meant to be some sort of platform to show what you are doing or what you've been doing. So that's reliant on the fact that you've been doing something and you've been doing it well. And I think a lot of people try to leapfrog that process of starting a business, learning the ropes, building something that is excellent, that has quality, something that they can actually sell. So we've talked about the blessings and quote curses of this Twitter ban, but I think it might give young people a chance. I mean, even though there's VPN anyway, but I think it might give them a chance also to, look inwards and say, what do I want to build? What do I want to sell out there? So you need to, as a young person, and I'm speaking to myself, actually go through that process of building a business. So is it furniture making? Is it shoe making? Is it makeup? Is it pedicure, whatever the case may be, there needs to be that process of apprenticeship, whether you like it or not, actually. I know that's a term a lot of people don't like, but there needs to be the learning process. You need to do your freedom in code. Be good at what you do, then you can now take it to social media. So I think we should not lose sight of that process of actually building a business and building it well. Because
so essentially,
at the end of the day, what do you want to sell?
Okay. Well, it's going to be a conversation that'll be ongoing. Don't worry about that.
Always
Just
is.
keep your gunpowder dry. We'll come to that as we progress, but you'll see a lot of highlights on some of those issues and the need for us to not just make some of those comments, but ensure that those facilities, the policies, the infrastructure is provided, that enabling environment, overarching enabling environment to allow certain things to thrive. So having said that, let's jump right in and take a look at some of the dailies and see what they highlight. Well, you already know. Take a look at Nigerian Tribune first. For instance, let's start from that today and see the front page of Tribune here picks up on that summit which the Southern governors held yesterday. And you can see there the Tribune highlighting some of those headlines here today. All right, so take a look at the Nigerian Tribune right there. Southern governors decide next president must come from south. Anti-open grazing law timeline is September 1. So look at the host of the riders there today. Rejects removal of electronic transmission of results from Electoral Act. Rejects proposed 30% share of profits for exploration of oil and gas in the basins. Reject 3% equity shares for all producing communities. Want governors informed of any security operations in their states. Want funds deducted from Federation account for Nigeria Police Security Trust Fund distributed among states. FG, so it is the big one which you see right there, which of course a lot of the papers will highlight here today. So there you go. Southern governor decide next president must come from south. Anti-open grazing law timeline is September 1. But then, well, similar scenario, or that is also related to part of those resolutions, which is above that lead story. PIB, give host communities 10% or we eject IOCs. Clark warns NAS. You also see rejects 30% NNPC profit for frontier exploration. So that's what you see there. But you know how the last of matters related to Sunday Igboho, as you see just beside the DSS invasion, FG shall apologize to Igboho, ascribed to Soyinka. But at the bottom strip, which you could also see there, bandits kidnap 140 students in Kaduna, police rescue 26, government closes 13 schools. So it continues to raise a lot of concern. I mean, if you also saw that story about them attacking, I think it's with leprosy center, tuberculosis and leprosy center, and kidnapping people there, you just thought, what in the world is really going on here? How could you can't even comprehend that kind of action. But there you go. That's the Tribune this morning.
Well, take a look at Vanguard newspaper. Leads with that, story on the Southern Governors meeting. We must okay FG's security operations in our states. Southern Governors, and you see Southern Governors in caps, perhaps for emphasis. It's on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Host of writers say presidency must return to South in 2023. Block 5%, or rather back 5% equity stake for host communities in PIB. Set September the 1st deadline for laws banning open grazing. Rejects removal of electronic transmission of results from amendment bill. That's electoral amendment bill. And the writers go on. But you see something from this edition, I believe, saying we respond for president. Wonder in what context that is. I find out more details on page 5, and there's that story. Yet again, bandits attack another Kaduna school, abduct 150 students. 26 escape attack, over 100 still missing. As soldiers foil attack on Oyedepo School Faith Academy. That one you find more details on page 9. And you see El Rufai condemns kidnap of Bethel Baptist students. But you see this one on top of the nameplate. Midnight raids, DSS children behave like bandits. Wonder who's saying that? It's on page 18 of the Vanguard this morning. Clearly, the dust has not settled over that one. You see the picture of the Southern governors just right after their meeting, as well as some other stories making the rounds. Let me just take one more. You might relate to this if you stay in Lagos. Traffic snarls, Lagos on lockdown. And for some people, this is a perpetual lockdown, day in, day out. This is what they have to go through. And you just wonder, will there be a day that this Lagos traffic would?
Oh, yeah, it happens.
No. I'm not talking public holidays.
Oh.
I mean, work days. Will there ever be a time that you would, get to your destination at the ETA that you gave?
Yeah, you will if you leave on time.
I'm not talking 5 hours before time. I mean, you're going 10 kilometers away and you have to leave like 3 hours before time.
Sometimes it's mysterious what causes traffic. Sincerely, it's just mysterious. A small puddle of water could cause a serious backlog.
In addition to how road users use the road.
Exactly. I mean, I don't even want to go there. The Daily Trust newspaper this morning, the angle of the Daily Trust newspaper to that Southern governor story is unique. Take a look. That's it. 2023 presidency. Southern governors shut out Atiku, Kwankwaso, Tambuwal, others.
Wow.
What an angle, right?
Yeah.
The details, of course, you'll find on the inside pages. Set September 1 for open grazing ban. Silent on Kanu, Igboho. Afenifere Pandef back governors. Lawyers say resolution not binding. North can't be intimidated. That's NEF. Find the story on page 5. The picture you see there on the front page is of parents and family members of abducted students of Bethel Baptist High School in Kaduna protesting along the Kachia-Kaduna highway yesterday. Definitely very, very disheartening. And the story is titled right under it, How Bandits Abducted 140 Students from Kaduna School. Story you'll find on page 5 of the paper this morning. Under the nameplate, PIB, 30% oil revenue for exploration pitches south against north. The details you'll find on the inside pages of the paper. That's the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Good morning, Markwe.
Morning, Ayo. Good morning, Nigerians. Let's take a look at what is on the front page of Leadership for you this morning. 2023 Southern Governor's stake to presidency shifts battle to regions. That's what you find on the front page of. For a number of people, they knew that the conversation around 2023 was going to start rather early when you consider the fact that the incumbent was in his last term or is in his last term. So you find out that politicking is starting rather early. 2023 Southern Governor's stake to presidency shifts battle to regions as APC, PDP governors close ranks, demand equity, fairness, want next president to emerge from southeast, south-south or southwest, give ultimatum on promulgation of anti-grazing law, northern governors keep mum. Well, page 4 is where you'll find details. You have a number of other stories at the bottom. They also have the picture of the parents who were protesting after their children were kidnapped in their school. That's the Bethel Baptist High School. They also show you pictures of how some of the abductors came into the school. Look at this one. Again, bandits abduct 140 students from Kaduna School. State government shuts down 13 schools. Getting rather out of hand. Page 7. Page 7 read for you. Fuel subsidy. Nigeria loses 2.53 trillion naira to smuggling in 1 year. Is this a report? Is this a research? You might want to see details on page 4 of the paper. Let's leave it there for Leadership newspapers.
Well, on to the Guardian newspaper next. Southern governors want power shifts, reject 30% share for frontier basins. Other member states to promulgate anti-open grazing law by September 1. Security agencies must inform governors before any operation in states. Ohaneze Ndigbo demands presidency for Southeast. Afenifere, Dawn Commission, others hail resolutions. So, and there you can see the image right there on the front page of the forum, the attendees. Stop pursuing Igboho, apologize to him, Soyinka tells FG. There will be uproar if truth about Nnamdi Kanu's arrest comes out. Whoa. So this we definitely want you to go read the story and see if there's any indication, any inkling whatsoever about truth or the said truth about Nnamdi Kanu's arrest. So it's right here for you. You can just go ahead and see for yourself. That's The Guardian today.
Take a look at Blueprint, and you see the big one. Despite FG's caution on open grazing ban, Southern governors fix September the 1st for takeoff. Say security agents must notify us before any operations. Insist on President of Southern Extraction. Reject Senate's 3% equity to host oil communities. OK reps 5%. That's how Blueprint leads this morning. You see, Nigeria spends 60 billion naira on pipeline repairs, loses 200,000 barrels per day. Wow, that's huge, especially if you're multiplying that by the current price of crude. Of course, yes, Nigeria doesn't get all of that. It's sharing and stuff, but that's still huge nonetheless. You see, again, Taraba NLC chair abducted. Yet another story on abduction. But right under the nameplate, you see the one in Kaduna. 24 hours after attack on Kaduna Leprosy Center, bandits abduct Bethel school students and teachers. And you can see the parents protesting yesterday in Kaduna. That's the picture you see just to the left on the front page of the Blueprint. Just one more. Foreign reserves plunge as Nigeria loses $2.1 billion in 6 months. Now, that's been consistent. We've seen, the follow-up on that story day by day now. More details on page 21 of the Blueprint newspaper this morning.
Nigerian News Direct, also interested in the Southern Governors meeting. PIB, Southern Governors reject 30% NNPC profit for inland basins exploration. Back zoning presidency to South. Re-emphasize need for state police. Approves September 1, 2021 for anti-open grazing law. The story is on page 2 this morning. Right beside the picture underneath, of course, that's the big picture, is that of the governors, cross-section of them yesterday. And right on beside the picture, the FG yet to meet 2.3 trillion naira COVID-19 stimulus package, ascribed to the Vice President. Pipeline vandalism. FG loses over 200,000 barrels daily, spends 60 billion naira annually on repair and maintenance.
The PIB says what? That, those communities that vandalize should pay for this equipment. I remember we did ask, whoa. So what if an external person vandalizes that? What happens? How do you identify that that's what happened?
If you ask me, the question that I would want to ask is, first of all, even before we get to that point that you just talked about, what have we done as a government? Are we up, with our hands in the air and saying we can't deal with it? I don't get it. Anyway, that's right there. It's ascribed to the Minister of Information and Culture. And right above the nameplate, Emefiele charges varsity to train students for entrepreneurship. That's the News Direct this morning.
Okay, there you go. That is it then with a look at some of the dailies here today. We will be back in a moment. Stay with us. So that is a bone of contention, to be or not to be. I think that will be the next question, or the question that's already been asked, and perhaps we'll get to see the answer much later this week, depending on when the House sits, considers the harmonized version from the gazetted version, and then we'll look to the Senate and then probably see what happens next. But at the moment, as you've seen or heard there, probably read on several other platforms, that people are not exactly taken by what they are reading. But so we've got someone to shed some light, probably not heat, on some of these matters, and we'll toss to Abuja now for that. Mark?
Thank you, Chamberlain. Indeed, when the House or the National Assembly is still trying to, justify what it is that they have passed in the Petroleum Industry Bill, it would seem that another controversy has begun to brew. Maybe not, or maybe there could be controversy from what you saw in that report there. We have with us Honorable Amos Gwamna Magaji, who is a member of the House Committee on Electoral Matters and also a member of the Joint Technical Committee of the House on Electoral Matters, with us this morning. Good morning, Honorable, and welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm sure that you have heard some of the controversies as we expect the passage of the electoral bill. First, it would seem that the electoral bill has been, I don't want to say dogged by controversy, but we did expect that the first quarter of this year, which was when it was promised, the electoral bill act would have been amended as promised. Now it's coming late, and it will seem that it's not without insinuations that this has been deliberate. And then now we're now beginning to hear that, what people were expecting will be passed in the bill to make it fair and to make the electoral process even smoother. It's not what is happening. Can you tell us what the situation is?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I know that the House Committee on Electoral Matter, with the support of our chairperson, Honorable Haicha Duku, we work tirelessly to ensure that the bill is presented to the House in the first quarter. We started this joint committee sitting early in January, and we were working, and we came out with a draft copy. And then it will interest you to know that in the joint technical committee, we had the Senate and the House of Reps. We had also civil society. We have also INEC. So it was tediously done and then gazetted and then to be presented to the House. So a lot of things came in, and we are about to present the bill now for consideration in the House. And then suddenly I was coming from my constituency on Sunday, and I began to receive several calls. What have you done? What is it? I said, I've not seen anything, but I know what we did. And then many of the things that are being passed on social media were completely not what we considered in the joint committee.
So are you concerned that maybe there have been changes along the way, or what precisely are your concerns right now?
Of course, I have to be concerned because Nigerians have been waiting for amendment of the Electoral Act. And then we have come to a point whereby we are, with all the effort put in place to give Nigerians what they deserve and what they desire. And then it seems a lot of controversy is coming here and there. I don't know it. I believe that what we have heard, or the document that is circulating in the social media, I want to believe that it is not the true position of what the bill is speaking, because I know that Nigerians are really yearning for credible election, and of course, everybody, even players in the process, will desire to have a credible election. For example, where there are no credible elections, you will hardly have development, and that's the first stage. If Nigeria will be developed, we must have credible election. And I tell you the truth, the House that I represent is committed to ensure that the electoral bill is considered.
So, Honorable, I would like us to shed a little more light on some of the things that you have heard, and from where you stand, tell us what the true position of what you passed is. Because we also had a colleague of yours on this program who said, and who was quite afraid and was wondering why it was that it has taken this long for the electoral bill to be presented to the floor of the House, that as far as they know, as a joint committee, they have since finished their work, and that this has been transmitted to the leadership of the House. Is that correct?
Very correct.
If it is correct, it means that the bill is no longer in your custody. Is that right?
Well, that's how the process it goes is like this. After the joint committee or the technical committee, the bill is presented to the entire committee, Then from the committee level, it goes to the General House, where it will be considered.
So tell us where it is right now.
Right now, it's at the process of, we had a meeting yesterday, the joint, the committee in the House, and then, of course, the meeting was very brief, and I believe maybe between now and tomorrow, we may have a committee sitting where we will have the gazetted copy before it is presented to the House. Then one will be sure that this is what is there. And but I know what we work on.
Okay, well, what I'm hoping that you'll be able to do is dispel the doubts in the minds of Nigerians. Even though I think that might be a bit difficult, I mean, I'm not in a position to say what will be difficult for you. You can say that yourself. But based on what you know, based on what you decided in the Joint Committee, is it true, for instance, that aspects of the bill that have to do with transmitting results to the center, that's INEC at the headquarters, for instance, is it true that those parts of the bill were removed or tampered with, or, not I don't want to say assented to, but, just tampered with by the Joint Committee? Now,
what that section, I think section 50, was highly debated during the technical section, because I remember when we were there, and then when we got to that section, we had to take a break and then came back to deal with that. And my position there was that Nigeria had made several huge investments in the electoral process from 2011, 2015. So much had been spent to ensure that we have credible election and we can conduct our election electronically and also transmit electronically. In fact, there are several examples now that will show you that the country is ripe for electronic voting and transmission of result. And that will reduce a lot of problems. It's worrisome that at this stage of our development that we have to close the entire nation anytime we're having election. It ought not to be so. And it will interest you to know that my own state, Kaduna State, had demonstrated that we can have electronic election and then transmission of result. And it was actually even tried in I think, Edo election.
So this is the argument. So what
was the argument? And then
we
came and the INEC was there. And of course, INEC had not said they don't have the capacity to conduct election electronically or transmit result electronically. INEC let INEC come and say, okay, we don't have the capacity.
What did the committee decide?
We decided that, okay, at the committee level, at the technical committee level, it was back and forth, then we now say, okay, INEC, what do you want now? You are the player, you are the one conducting the election, and you have done it, you have run different elections, you have done it in several places. What are the challenges here and there? And then, of course, what it was agreed was that where reasonably practicable, INEC will conduct election electronically and transmit election electronically. But there are also areas where, like some remote areas in the country, where you may find it difficult to transmit a result electronically. But I know that the electronics we are using right now, even if the place does not have service, if it is like text messages that you send, once you leave the remote area and you come to areas where you have network, immediately it gets sent. And that is the only way we can ensure that all the violence we're experiencing in our polling unit and in the collation center will be completely taken off. And of course, Nigerians in diaspora are also yearning and eager to participate in our electoral processes. And electronic election, voting and transmission of result will also help to solve many of these problems. Countries smaller than Nigeria have practiced it and it's working. And of course, even in my state, the election we have in August 14 will be done electronically. So I think if we really want to, I don't know why, but sincerely, I am yearning to see that we move from yesterday. We moved from Stone Age election to what is obtained in this very stage of our development.
In other words, the committee agreed after much debate that this is the way to go, electronic voting, but you made provisions for where there will be no network.
Yeah, where in case there are difficulties. So we left it with INEC to decide where there are difficulties, this and this should be done. But we agree that elections should be done electronically, and if not, we have made huge investment. And some of the things that INEC has even procured for election are some of the electronic devices. And some of them were even demonstrated.
Insinuations are rife that is not what is currently in the Electoral Act as amended. That's the fear out there in the public. I'm sure you heard you heard the gentleman in the press conference there express the fear that many have now shared widely on WhatsApp and whatever platforms they are on social media, that this is now not what is going to be delivered in the Electoral Act.
You see, the truth about it is that we're there to represent the people, and we must be sensitive to the voice of the people. And I just read the communique issued by the Southern Governors Forum, and in their item 5, one of the things they actually stood for was this electronic. So if we have a section of the country representing about 17 states that came out to say they are supporting electronic voting and transmission of results, then that means the general public is in support of it. And of course, if anybody is not in support of electronic voting and transmission of results, then I believe is a very few section of the country. But the majority, I believe that that's what Nigeria is yearning for. And then it interests you to know that we have the country has already made over 80% investment. So we are not even going to spend more in ensuring that it takes place. The investment has already been made in the past.
Let me flip this to my colleagues. I'm sure they have questions for you, gentlemen.
Well, Honorable Magaji, let's try to do this again. Forgive me. Let's run through the process that this Electoral Act Amendment Bill has gone through and where it is now from the inception. So if you could just help Nigerians understand the process that went into it, the first reading, the second, and all, until we got to this point, so we can identify where the issue might be, because this is huge. You don't even need to go on social media alone. Even on pages of newspaper, you find these issues. So if you could just help Nigerians understand the process that this bill has gone through so far.
Okay, the first you need to understand that when a bill comes, it goes through the first reading, and then the second reading, and then it goes to the public hearing. We receive a lot of memorandum from different parts of the country showing the concern and showing the interest of Nigerians in Electoral Act amendment. So many organizations submitted their memorandum, and then all were considered. We look at those memorandum, and then the committee sat down, technical committee sat down and considered the report. We had representative of the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation. We had INEC. We had civil society. And then interested parties were all there in the technical committee. So it was huge. It was a strong team that was there. And then a lot of areas came, and where we actually had a lot of argument during the technical session was the issue of electronic voting and transmission of result. And then, as I said earlier on, through that process, a lot, many people, we had, some were saying, okay, we should leave it to INEC to decide. Some are saying, no, let's spell it out black and white so that we know that we have it in in the Electoral Act, that this is the way election should be conducted.
Okay, so in other words, the committee finished its work and came up with a report. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, so if indeed, I mean, some of the provisions we're seeing really happened, or if they were really changed, where could this have happened? At whose table could these changes have been made? Because it's quite hard to really figure out what's happening here. But if indeed, or if there's any possibility, where could this have happened?
To be sincere, I don't know. And then, I don't want to assume it is true that it has been changed. Because even if it has to be changed, then that means the whole technical committee need to sit again to consider the changes. Some of the things that have been assumed to have been smuggled into the electoral bill were strange. I've been receiving calls. I've been seeing some document in social media that are completely different from what I believe were considered. So let me assume these are not true. And then I'm waiting to see the gazetted copy that we really considered. I have my own copy in my office that was considered. So, and I know that, I know what is there. So okay, I want Nigerians to rest assured that...
from some of the ones circulating, so let's just read out this to you so that we'll show that we're on the same page on the controversial piece that is circulating out there. Just in case we have a wrong one as well, you never can tell. Because we see that there are 20 provisions that have been inserted in the one that is causing an uproar, saying, look, this is not the one that we've seen. So we see that Section 52, subsection 2 was drafted. And so we see here, they say that the old provision indicated that, quote, voting at an election and transmission of results under this bill shall be in accordance with the procedure determined by the commission, end of quote. The new provision says, quote, voting at an election under this bill shall be in accordance with the procedure determined by the commission, which may include electronic voting, provided, which is in caps, that the commission shall not transmit results of elections by electronic means. So is that the version that you saw that members are up in arms with?
That is completely erroneous. That is not what the committee worked on.
Yeah, but is this the one that you saw that is causing this uproar?
Well, somebody sent the same thing you're reading to me.
So you've seen this part. This is not what was worked on.
What you read now in... Yeah, what you read in section 52, I have received it in my WhatsApp. Somebody sent the same thing to me. I said, no, that is not what we considered.
Okay, so...
Because, you see, anybody in the technical committee will know that section because it was highly debated.
Go ahead.
You know, this is extremely important. This is extremely important because I'm looking at the story now. This is from the Senate President saying that the Electoral Act will be passed in 2 weeks, and that Nigerians who are not comfortable. I mean, let me quickly read this now. He says the National Assembly is embarking on the amendment of the Electoral Act probably by the next week or within the next 2 weeks. I mean, he said this at an event, Public Complaints Commission. We're inaugurating the Public Complaints Commission and 37 other commissioners. That's where he said this. He said the National Assembly is embarking on the amendment of the Electoral Act probably by the next week or within the next 2 weeks. It is very important that those who feel very strongly about any amendment that they think should be effected in the Electoral Act should contact or talk to their members of the House of Representatives as well as distinguished senators. I want to state categorically clear here that presiding officers are not the ones to determine what is coming or what is not. So it is very important that in the same fashion, in the same way the Public Complaints Commission is utilized properly by the general public. That's what he said. Now, I'm thinking to myself, if members of the public are not comfortable with the changes they're hearing have now been passed, or not passed now, but have been agreed upon by members of the Joint Committee. If the Joint Committee members know that that is not what they have passed, or that is not what they have agreed upon before it gets to the general body of the House, don't they have a duty to bring out the version that they have agreed upon? Especially because this is now work that is finished, because it's past the public hearing stage. I mean, there is no way, that the public is going to be aware of it again. After it has gone past, the public has already said what it is that they are comfortable with. It has gone to the technical committee. Is there any way that people can know what is there?
Yes.
So that in case they are uncomfortable with some of the provisions, it can be dealt with before it finally goes to the floor for passage?
If you remember, I said earlier on that I don't want to insinuate. I want to see the gazetted copy laid. And once it is laid in the House, you can apply for CT, certified true copy. Mm-hmm. Anybody in the society, in the general public can apply for the certified true copy and get what is presented. But for now, it is still rumor. Let's wait and see what is presented to the House. When it is laid, you know that this is what is laid.
Wouldn't that be too late?
It won't be too late.
Because, I mean, even for members, some people will say...
Now, even when it's laid, that doesn't mean that it is agreed. We still have to debate about every clause in the General House. I don't know if you're getting me. Once the bill is laid in the House, it doesn't mean that it is final.
You know why this is important?
Yeah.
See what is happening with the petroleum industry bill. Only yesterday we were informed by Senator Sekibo that the joint committee of both chambers had agreed on 5% for host communities, and that just before the Senate was about to pass its own version of the bill, that the two members of the executive were invited. The head of the NNPC and also the Minister of State for Petroleum were invited to brief the Senate. And shortly afterwards, they found out that they had to, reduce the amount from the originally agreed 5% that was agreed by the Joint Technical Committee of both the Senate and the House. The House passed its own 5%, but not the Senate. So wouldn't it be too late?
No,
when this is laid before the House for debate or for assent by members, if this is what members are already beginning, this is what the public is already beginning to see, and members are also beginning to see it, shouldn't they be demanding to see whether or not what is still with the leadership of the National Assembly is the correct version, or maybe somebody has tampered with it before it got to them or while it was with them?
Now, I want Nigerians to be calm over this, not to be agitated. Because one, the bill is not yet an act. And even if it's an act, there is no act that cannot be amended.
Which one of the bills, sorry?
The electoral bill.
Okay, the electoral. I need to be sure.
The electoral bill is still a bill. It's under consideration. It has not yet been passed. And even if it is passed, for instance, that same section 50 is passed the way Chamberlain read it. That section can also be amended. So I want everybody to calm down and let's see how what unfolds within this. As you said, the Senate President said within 2 weeks. Let's see what unfolds. But consider if you look at the PIB, for example, we need to understand that every piece of legislation should be workable. Should be something that is agreed, that will carry. It may not be agreed by every Nigerian, but let it be that the majority are comfortable with every piece of legislation. Because the law is for man, not man for law. And once, even if it has been smuggled in, I don't know, I've not seen it, but let's say it has been smuggled in, with the uproar and then the concern that many Nigerians are expressing, I believe that the House will reconsider that. And of course, I wanted to understand that clause to clause will be considered. Clause to clause will be considered in the House.
Let me ask what your reaction will be when you get to the floor of the House, when this bill is going to be considered, and it turns out that what is presented before the House was not what the Joint Committee decided upon.
Well, sincerely, I will be disappointed. Because, you see, we need to get to a stage in our nation where...
Is that where it's going to end? Disappointment?
No. It won't end there. It won't end there. As I'm telling you right now, there are different... let's wait and see what happens in the House. But I'm assuring you that the majority in the players in the House, members of House of Rep, are yearning to see that the electoral process is amended. We want it. We, the players, also want it. I will be happy today if my people don't want me. Let me be voted out. The day they want me back, they will vote me in. And with that, we will see development in our nation. Because if you know that the people's voice matter, you wouldn't be elected and do just what you want to do. For example, for crying out loud, if our JAM and WAEC are doing electronic, if Jumia right now, you can sit in Abuja and buy something in Jumia, then I believe that the country is ripe, maybe many years back, to conduct electronic election and transmission of results. And that will take away many things off our polity. All this ballot box snatching, all the terrible things we see in our polling unit will be gone. And that is what we are working to achieve. And I want Nigerians to be rest assured, this present House, by the grace of God, will give them what they desire.
I think the only time,
very soon,
only time we'll be able to say whether or not the National Assembly will be delivering. I mean, you're speaking very, very comfortably for the House. You haven't said the National Assembly, interestingly, but you keep saying...
When I speak for the House, I represent.
That's what I'm saying.
I represent House of Rep.
It is amazing that you're only able to speak for the House. You're not able to say this National Assembly, will deliver on what Nigerians want.
I believe
it's
so.
remarkable.
Now, let me tell you something.
Okay.
Why I speak for the House of Rep is that, we are 360.
Okay, Honorable, I'll let you justify why you're speaking for the House when we come back from this break. Please stay with me. Honorable Amos Gwama Magaje is still here with us. He's a member of the House Committee on Electoral Matters and also a member of the Joint Technical Committee of the House, which worked on the amendment of the electoral bill. And we're talking about the controversy that has come up in the wake of, the expectation that the electoral bill is going to be amended soon by both the House and the Senate. So yes, they're going to be presenting it on the floor of both the House and the Senate very soon. And of course, the Senate President has been speaking, saying that if people are not comfortable with certain parts of the bill, that they had better raise those objections with their representatives in both the House and in the Senate. But the question is, what exactly has been worked on in this bill as amended? Because now we have members saying, no, what is circulating in social media are not the things that we agreed upon in the Joint Committee. So, Honorable here is saying we should wait. And it would seem that you're only able to speak categorically for the House.
Yeah, I spoke about the Joint Committee, which... in the Joint Committee, we interest you that we have men that have earned their respect in this country. The Joint Committee was chaired by His Excellency, the former governor of Kano State, Kabiru Gaya. And then we also had His Excellency, Malam Shekaro, former governor of Kano. We also had a seasoned legislator, the former Deputy Senate President, Ikwere Madu. He was part of the committee. And we also had another senator, then member of House of Rep. We are like 3 or 5 or so. So we work on it. And then I told you earlier, the civil society was also there. INEC was there. And then the representative of the Attorney General. So we work on that. And after working on that, and why I can say I'm speaking categorically about the House, as you said, because since we came back we have had committee meeting in the House of Rep. I don't know what Senate has, whether Senate has had their own meeting, but we have had several meetings and nothing was changed from what we considered in the joint technical session.
So that's why you're only able to speak for the House?
Yeah, I can speak for the House.
Because you don't know what has happened in the Senate?
Yeah, I don't know, but let me assume nothing has changed in the Senate.
Okay, so if on the floor of the House, your expectations are not met, I mean, what you say, because you say you're able to speak categorically for the House, what is presented before you for passage is not the same thing. What would you do?
Well, you see, the House has our own. The House will present. I believe that what we work in the House will be what I'm sure that this is what will be presented for consideration. But if there is any alteration, we can vote in the House, on the floor of the House. That's why I said everybody should be rest assured. It is not yet a piece of legislation. It is not yet final. And then even if, let's imagine there are things that were smuggled in or consideration that were altered, it is not too late to change them. With the uproar in the society, I believe that even if that was tempered, I say even if it were tempered, but I don't think it was because I've not seen it. I can't speak for what I've not seen. I believe that it is not too late to revert back to what Nigerians are really yearning for. But in case we have a different view, the Senate and the House of Rep, we go into voting. And then, of course, you know, the Senator and the House of Rep members each has voting right.
It's a problem, you know, the voting. Let me quickly let my colleague come in here, because I know he has questions for you, Kayode.
Absolutely. I mean, still a lot of issues to resolve. Thanks, Mark. But Honourable, another area that is circulating, you may have seen that as well, is the section about election expenses for president or presidential election, governorship, Senate, and House of Reps. Have you seen that? Is that what is captured in the copy you have? Is it 15 billion for presidential, or 1 billion, or 5 billion? What exactly do you have in your own copy?
To be candid, I cannot remember the exact figure right now, but then I'm not bothered about that part, in as much as they didn't say if you don't have money, you won't run for election. They just put a cap on the expenses for election. So that means I shouldn't pass that level, but it doesn't mean that I should. I shouldn't spend below that. So I'm not worried about that. My only concern about the huge cost of election expenses is the not too young to run bill. The young Nigerians that really want to participate and are encouraged to go into vie for elective positions may not have that huge money to vie for election, which will probably discourage the young Nigerians or people that have vision, dreams, and have goal for this country and may not have the money to spend. But I don't want anybody to be discouraged because of the cap that is placed on election expenses. Okay, nobody said if you don't have money, you shouldn't run for election.
Understandably.
It only said that it shouldn't go above some certain amount.
Understandably, but I mean, if you have other candidates who can pull such weight, I mean, elections also is about the funds put in terms of advertorials and other resources. So if a candidate can pull such weight, you imagine other candidates can, they probably don't stand as much chance. But I'd like you to listen to something the Minister of Information said, still regarding election expenses, because there are huge questions about the enforcement of what we already have in place. If, for example, House of Reps election, there's a cap, and you hear the spending of 150 million, which clearly is more than that. But please listen to what the minister said about a certain by-election that was conducted in 2018. And I'd like to get your response regarding enforcement.
I told them, and I said in Yoruba, that they should explain to Nigerians and to all of you what happened to the balance of 70 million naira that Aguilar kept, that he refused to give us during the by-election. But grace of God and friends, there would have been no election in November 2018. Because when we raised money and we gave them 2 days to election, their phones were shut off. We could not reach them again. I had to go to friends to raise an extra $150 to prosecute that election.
So, of course, the candidate did respond saying that, well, it's a minister that has questions to answer. But 150 million naira to prosecute a by-election for House of Reps position. And, I mean, it's clearly spelled out in the Electoral Act. So questions still remain about enforcement. Who's meant to monitor this? And what provisions are being made for that?
Yeah, that's why I said I'm not so bothered about how much is spent on election. The reason is that I am bothered about development. The reason why sometimes our elections are expensive is because we have neglected some key sector of the economy, education, health. And then if you are running for election, you discover that these are areas whereby money is being spent. And then if we develop our capacity, it will get to a point whereby if people are educated, if you like, come with $1 billion naira to contest for local government election. If people are exposed and if people are empowered, they'll tell you, go with your money. This is the person we want. So the most important is that if you like, cap local government election 1 billion, but let's ensure that the people have their voice. I've seen it in different areas and in different elections that the candidate with the highest or that spend more, it's not the candidate that won. And as you said rightly, who is going to monitor? How are you going to monitor the expenses? Is it just on election day or from the process of campaigning up to the day of election? So it is a little bit difficult to determine how much is spent on election because the amount spent on election, it is not visible for somebody to really see and say, this is the amount you have spent. You go to see delegate and then you visit a delegate, you see them in their houses. Who follows you to know how much you gave the person? But I want us to ensure that people have their voice, that money is not used to subvert, money is not used to manipulate, money is not used to change the will of the people. And we are getting there. And once we get there, nobody will tell Nigerians that money does not grant you victory in an election. So people need to develop to a point whereby many of the things that they ask us in, I would prefer today that every Nigeria has free education, every Nigeria has free health care. And then when you go to campaign, let's see what you will give people. Let's see what you will talk about. Let's see your policy. And that is what will reduce election expenses. Because I tell you, I'm a player. I know where many people spend money running for election. And when we fix all those areas, we will discover that our election will immediately crash. So the cap is placed. Is it from the time you started running for an election, the time you started expressing interest, visiting your constituency, visiting delegates, holding stakeholders meeting, or the money you give on the day of primary, or the money you use for logistics on the day of general election? Which one? So we need to understand, is it the money spent on the day of election or the money spent throughout the period from the inception to the last day of election? It is very difficult to determine.
So many areas to consider. I'm sure that there will still be many more opportunities to have further discussions on the Electoral Act, even as we expect its passage. We have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning, Honorable Amos Gwamna Magaji, Member House Committee on Electoral Matters, and also Member Joint Technical Committee of the House. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much
for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that will be it for this segment. We will come back and we'll be discussing other matters. Remember that the Southern governors met again in Lagos yesterday, and they had quite a lot to say in their communique. Please stay with us.
Well, We're joined now by His Excellency Doye Diri, Governor of Bayelsa State, to shed some light on some of those resolutions agreed on in the Southern Governors meeting. Good morning, Your Excellency. Thank you for joining us today on the program.
Chamberlain, good morning.
All right, let's start off with that, almost that last bit, which is where we left off with the previous conversation about the rejection of the non-transmission of votes electronically. So, do the governors have it on good authority that that is what the Assembly is planning to pass in the Electoral Amendment Act?
Well, for us, we want a transparent system. We want a system that when results are so transmuted, it will be very acceptable. So whether it was a rumor, whether it was part of what the National Assembly has agreed on, we only wanted to set our record straight and then tell Nigerians what we as governors of Southern Nigeria want in the Electoral Amendment Bill.
So does that then, can we assume that the governors have in turn, briefed or spoken with their representatives in the National Assembly to tow the same path?
Oh, sure, yes. We are on the same page with our representatives across Southern Nigeria. And in fact, indeed, we have resolved to have very formal meetings with our representatives across Southern Nigeria.
A part of that document has been circulating concerns spending, election spending, and I mean, breaks it down for presidential election, governorship election, I mean, which concerns you as well. Did you see any need to intervene in that as well?
Sure. I think that almost everybody is not happy with the huge expenditure during elections. And we are just looking at the formal bit of it. Nobody is looking at the informal expenditures that are being carried out by those who are contesting elections. And what we see is that money has a very big role to play in elections. And if we need to reduce the influence of money in our electoral processes, I think that beyond looking at the formal financial involvements, we also have to look at the informal side. Just like the honorable member was saying, how do you even evaluate the monies that have been expended by those who are contesting elections to delegates, to voters and all that behind the scene? So it is actually a food for thought, and it's worrisome. And we all as Nigerians need to look at that. As governors, we are very worried about it too.
Do you see a possibility, Your Excellency, that we can nip that in the bud such that money doesn't play the kind of role it plays now? You've talked about formal spending and informal spending. The challenge then would be, how do we monitor it? You can't even coin it in law, can you?
Well, our problem has not been much of laws, but implementation. It's not the lack of laws per se, but the implementation of it and the sincerity and the honesty and the commitment by those of us who have the powers of implementation. And again, it is both ways. Those who are implementing it and then those of us who are voters. Because if we also are committed to making the electoral process free of fraud, even as voters, we need to now begin to sing a new song that getting money during elections will actually not bring the kind of democracy that we all are anticipating to have in Nigeria, a democracy that will grow from strength to strength. So for me, at this stage, it is difficult to nip in the bud, but it's a welcome development, the amendment of the electoral bill. If we go into full-scale electronic voting, we have the registers that are electronic. We have the process of voting, which is voting itself, will now be by electronic. And then the transmitting of the results will also be in the same process. That will go a long way to also check the influence of money in the process.
Well, Your Excellency, I mean, when it comes to, I mean, you talked about, you know, the fact that the responsibility is also on the voter. But at a time when some people say poverty has been weaponized against the people, so to speak, it will be really difficult to say that people shouldn't collect the money. But hopefully that is what the game plan is. But the challenge here is enforcement of that provision of the law. How do you, is it possible to enforce the law such that people do not incentivize people with money to vote for them?
Again, the enforcement is both ways. It's both ways. When you are in that process, the agencies, INEC, the security agencies, will have to lead by example. If they lead by example and monies do not play so much role in their discharge of their own duties, it will also rub off on the electorates. It will rub off on the politicians. Because if an INEC official, if a security agency refuses a politician with all the influences of money, that will rub off on the electorate. And so it is something that both the institutions charged with the processes, the politicians themselves, and the people have to be on one page. It is not something that will come up maybe just from top to down. It has to go from bottom to the top and from the top to the down.
Speaking about the petroleum industry bill, yes, the Southern governors rejected that proposed 30% share of profit for the exploration of oil and gas in the basins. They also rejected the 3% to host communities, wanting 5%. But for some of those positions on the PIB, why did the governors have to wait until this point? Because even many say 3 or even 5% is way too small.
Yeah, that's very correct. The governors didn't wait until now. You recall that our first meeting as Southern governors was in Asaba, and that's about a month ago. And before then, individually, and each state has held a position. And if you look at those positions, they are almost common within the Southern governors. Speaking on behalf of my state, Bayelsa, we held a position, and that was a position that we went to defend even during the public hearings by the National Assembly. And our position was very clear. Clearly, we came against the 30% for exploration of oil in the frontiers states or basins. We cannot imagine how you are proposing, as at that time, even 2.5% for the communities. And then you want to go and explore oil with the profit, with the proceeds from these oil-producing communities for 30%. Is unthinkable, and that is total injustice. And so for us in Bayelsa and almost all the other oil producing states, we went to National Assembly and stated our position that the least we can stand for was 10%. And we rejected that 30% proposal And by the way, let me state this very clearly. No oil company develops or explores oil from proceeds or profits from an NPC. We have seen major international oil companies, the IOCs, the Nigerian Najib Oil Company, Shell Oil Company. None of them have explored oil from proceeds of other people's oil. And so we see this again as another fraud. We see this again as another injustice meted out to the oil producing communities, just as we have seen the land use. So that's one. And then we also looked at the definition of oil producing states. Again, some people say that has been misinterpreted, but you cannot have everywhere that pipeline goes through to be now defined as an oil producing community. An oil producing community couldn't have been where pipes are laid. And that is the common understanding that Nigerians are beginning to have about the definition of oil producing communities, which again is totally unacceptable to us, particularly those of us whose states are the oil producing states.
All right, Excellency, we'll go to break, but we'll be back in about 3 minutes, so please stay with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, Your Excellency, you were a member of the Senate. You even headed that committee, oil and gas. So many thought that there must have been some negotiations, some lobbying concerning this PIB way before now. Could you give us some of the backstory? What could the undercurrents have been? How come that it appeared as though all of those, parley didn't yield the required results?
Well, you can see how long this has been in the, and these were some of why it has been in the coup. One as the other. The time we meet was at the national. These were the burning issues. We are, most of our colleagues, other Nigeria, who do not see reasons why we are saying what we believe in. IB has taken this. I actually want to the current assembly for tackling this head. Some of why the PIB are cooked for these number of years. The issues that I've just highlighted, the issues of the deficit and oil producing, and it's a time bomb if we do not address the issue of who and oil producing. It will further lead to more confrontations and agreements within the polity.
Your Excellency, it is actually quite interesting when we hear stuff like this that you have said. But if things have gotten to this point, such that the yearnings of the people would seemingly be unmet, what then do you think the options are for the people? Largely, one could see, the efforts, at least efforts of some members of the National Assembly, they made, especially those from the Niger Delta, trying to push as much as they could for the interests of their people. So if the interests of the Niger Delta people are not being met as desired, the host communities in particular, are not being met, what do you think the options are?
Yeah, for me and then for us in Bayelsa, we have agreed that we will actually engage in dialogue. We want to engage in dialogue and bring to the fore the issues and why people who do not understand our environment and the environmental degradation, and of course the effects on our economy, the effects on our psyche, and even on our social relationships. We need to bring them to the fore for everybody to appreciate, so that when we come with these arguments, those who are not from the Niger Delta will understand why we are bringing up such arguments. I like to recall here, whilst we were in the 8th Assembly in the House of Representatives, I had a colleague from northern Nigeria, precisely from Niger State, who was chairman of a committee, and we went on oversight to somewhere in Delta State. And by the time we returned, my colleague called me and said, look, I now understand your position, why the position you take on the floor of the House. But henceforth, I will not oppose your presentation on the floor of the House. And I think most of it is out of the ignorance of those who are not in the terrain of the Niger Delta. If you go to the Niger Delta now, we're talking about Ogoni cleanup, but the whole of the Niger Delta terrain needs cleanup. If you go to the Niger Delta now, the livelihood of the people is totally finished. And we must consciously give back to these people. And so, for me, the way forward is dialogue, understanding and appreciation of the issues, the challenges of the people of these oil-producing communities.
Your Excellency, there are those who also ask the question around why allocate 30% of profits of the NNPC that you mentioned earlier for new frontiers when the previous spendings on these frontier business have not been probed. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, and our take is that is injustice. Our take is that these are potential areas of conflicts, because I believe that for those of us who are advocating for dialogue, there are also those who had believed and thought that these people actually do not want us to be in Nigeria. Otherwise, I mean, it's unimaginable that you are giving 5%, which is even from the House of Reps, from the Senate is 3%, to those whose communities have been affected, whose means of livelihood has been affected, and going further, oil exploration and oil exploitation is continuing in those communities. And here you are giving 30% to frontier states. And before now, like you rightly mentioned, huge sums of money have been allocated for that purpose. And no oil has been found. In fact, my prayer is that oil should be found in those frontiers, in those basins, so that maybe this expropriation will stop. Because maybe if we find, for instance, oil in Chad Basin, certainly those who are from the Chad Basin will also now become oil-producing communities and will also benefit from the derivation. And let us see if they will agree at that point that those whose soil from which oil is found should be given 13% and 87% should be surrendered to the rest of the country.
Well, so many issues on that area, but let's see if it will dovetail into the other. The resolution, part of the resolutions also indicated that by September 1, there was going to be a promulgation of anti-open grazing law in the region. Do you think there's been enough, perhaps consultation, dialogue with other regions in the country to ensure or see reason why this has got to be so, such that there'll be that understanding and not that it will rub off in the wrong way?
Yeah, thank you, Chamberlain. First, I'd like to state here that the issue of grazing is a commercial, private activity. Just like any other commercial, private venture. I don't see why we should need somebody else's opinion to regulate the movement of cattle, which is purely a private activity. For us as a state and for us as a region, we are also having the wherewithal, we have the authority to protect our citizens and their businesses. And by the Nigerian Constitution, we have been so vested with these powers of lawmaking. That's why in every state you have a State House of Assembly, and which is to regulate. Because where one man's right stops, another person's right begins. And for us in Bayelsa, our open anti-grazing law was signed on the 11th of March, 2021. And so from the date that I appended my signature and assented to that bill, in Bayelsa, it has already come into effect. And we have arrested some of them who breached the law. And they have paid the penalties. And so for us in Bayelsa, it is not from September. Ours have started far back as 11th of March 2021. And so the point here is that we do not need any other person's input in making of our laws. We went through the process of lawmaking. If anybody who is interested in making an input, he should have gone there during the public hearing and then make his own inputs. And so the issue of consulting others in making laws just reduces our democracy and what the Constitution actually stands for.
You know, I mean, the governors had to come together to say this in some sense. I mean, they say there's strength in numbers. And one wonders, have you had pushback from any quarters such that the governors now had to come together and say, fine, if you can withstand maybe one or two of us, certainly not all of us. Has there been a lot of pushback, especially for your state? I mean, you said you've promulgated that law. Has there been any sort of pushback such that there was a need now for all the governors in the southern region to come together and say, this is what we want?
You know, we in our meetings, we discuss common issues and common challenges. This was also one of those common challenges. And when it was even brought to the floor of our meetings, already states like Bayelsa, I think Ondo, Oyo, and few of us have already taken, proactive steps on the issue before. So when it was brought to the floor of our meeting, the response from every other governor was the same. And that's why it was imperative at that point that we take a common position on it.
Well, I didn't actually mean that they should seek the permission of others before coming up with a position on the open grazing. I was trying to, because I know politicians use the term lobbying, consultation and the likes before certain things are done. Because, I mean, we've heard them say several times that those people who are actually herding those cows don't really own them, that they're usually those who send them. So it is from that context, especially when we also remember that the governor of Kano State always has said, look, this is not sustainable. We need to ensure that this stops. So that was the perspective. One thought that if you perhaps they let them see reason why this should not be, but the law will remain. So that's what I meant by that.
Oh, thank you. I understand you clearly now. But just as you said, even in the north, from where these herders, come to the southern part of the country, there are a lot of voices against open grazing. It is no more fashionable. It is not practicable. And across the world, you don't hear that again. For me, that's another sign, another symptom of underdevelopment in any part of the world. And so we need to move away. We need to move away from open grazing, to ranching. And I'm happy that most of my colleagues, even in the north, not most, some of them are advocating for ranching. And that's the solution to this problem. I don't think that in this century that people should be moving, even those of them who are moving. There are people who do not have the opportunity. I don't think that those who own the cattle will ask their own children to move from northern Nigeria by foot to southern Nigeria. I don't believe so. Their children will be studying in schools. Even if they have to rear cattle, it has to be the most modern techniques and technology of rearing cattle. And that's what we are all advocating. And so these people who are moving, some say they are not even Nigerians. Some say they are coming in from other countries. We need to stop it.
Well, the forum also spoke about the presidency coming from the South. But we know that that is not how these things work. It's going to take much more than that pronouncement. So is it that the Southern governors are also going to do the work? Because, I mean, certain people will say, if you take that position, does that then mean that you wouldn't want to see anyone from any other region vie for that position other than people from the South?
Not necessarily, Chamberlain, not necessarily. Well, this is where your initial thoughts have come in, so to speak. At this point, what we need to do is lobbying. We have taken a position, and that position is a political position. So you don't need to impose it on people. You have to now talk to people. You have to lobby them and see reasons with you why, our position will be beneficial to the country. It will be beneficial for the smooth, power transfer from one region to the other. The North has what it takes, to produce a president, and ditto the South. The South has what it takes to produce a president. And for us to live harmoniously, respect for each other, and believe that power actually comes from God. But when we have this relationship and this understanding that for 8 years, for 2 terms, as our constitution has allowed, one particular region will be there, and then the next time we transfer to the other region. And do not forget the brief history from former President Obasanjo. When he was done with his 2 terms, he left the scene and brought in Yaradua. And Yaradua was there. The unfortunate incident of death happened, and that brought in the child of necessity, which led to our leader and my brother, the former president, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, assuming office. And after the 4 years, the North now moved, that the power was actually theirs and it must return to them. I should return to them. And finally, they got it. And now we are seeing the last term of President Buhari. And it is only usual, only normal and acceptable to us from the South that this will be reciprocated by our brothers from the North. And that's why we took that decision yesterday to say that in 2023, the president should actually come from the South.
The clock is ticking. It's less than 2 years to the 2023 elections. I mean, one would also imply that that rotation was implied, really, because you just referenced what happened after former President Obasanjo ended his tenure, how we brought in former President Yaradua, and then up till this point. So one would think it was some sort of gentleman agreement. Why was there a need for the governors to come out with such strong statement? Had you been seeing maybe signs, symptoms, things were going the other way, and you thought, wait a minute, we need to steer this back on the course we want? Why was there a need to come up with that position in the first place?
Well, you'll agree with me that whatever we have done, it's not constitutionally backed up. It is not constitutional that the presidents have to rotate between the North and the South. It is actually more of a gentleman's agreement, and to enhance peaceful coexistence and for us to have a democracy that all the groups, all the ethnic nationalities, and all the regions will also key in and buy in. And so, I don't know, you described it as a very strong statement, but for us, we feel and we believe that this will only enhance peaceful coexistence and being your brother's keeper.
Well, Excellency, it's just a year and some months ever since you got into office, and already you know how it is in this country. People want politicians, elected officials to hit the ground running, as you people usually say. And now they say that in your state that work is slow, the shadow of your predecessor looms large on your administration. They just want a lot of things to change.
Well, I don't know who the they are. I don't know who the they are.
They are your constituency. They are Bayelsans as well.
No, that's not true of Bayelsans. Bayelsans are very happy. Bayelsans know that we are doing well. And Bayelsans have been pouring praises and encomiums on us. But to answer that question, firstly, you know, I came in as governor in the month of COVID-19, which was February. And from then on, well, I would rather say we lost about a year to COVID-19, and a lot of distractions by way of legal battles. But immediately COVID-19 ended and we hit the ground running. We have done so much in the state, that if you, Chamberlain, I would like to invite you to come over to Bayelsa and see things for yourself, so that you will not be depending on they say, but you will actually see and say. I don't like singing my praises. I like others to actually look at and tell me where we have done wrong and where we have done right. But I think that we have done so much, and so much is going on in Bayelsa State.
All right, well, we'd like to hear from Bayelsans as well on your promise. But so is it that they don't have a point when they say that, well, yes, your predecessor played a role in your assumption of office, but when they say that he's pulling too much strings, isn't that a point that they make?
That's what I'm saying. I don't want you to be the they say Riekura. I want you to go there and see things for yourself. It's a state that politics has divided to factions, you know, and there was so much of bitterness and hatred. And as I speak with you, part of what I came with as an agenda was to ensure that we reconcile. In fact, I came with a ministry of reconciliation. If you go back to my statements on the day of my inauguration, you will see what I mean. And I stood by it, and I've been practicing that. Before now, you see people who do not belong to the same political parties. They can't even eat together. Some of them don't even greet. But all that is changing. And in terms of infrastructure, we are doing so much in infrastructure. We are carrying on with so much of projects, senatorial road projects and urban renewal projects within Yenagoa. And we have even started a lot of human capital development. We are not at the peak yet, but very soon we'll get to the peak of human capital development.
In fact, that's the point where, pardon me to jump in. I mean, yes, we always like to see a harmonious working environment and relationship, government really being a continuum. One government leaves, another comes in and continues in that same project from the center to the subnationals. That is always what people want to see. So could you then tell us, or tell our Bayelsans who are equally listening, what is your target? What should they look forward to in terms of either creating the environment for employment, at least in the next, 1 year, 2 years, months? What should they look forward to?
Well, you know, a lot of politicians make promises, and sometimes those promises may not be kept. For me, I want to first of all see a peaceful Bayelsa state. A peaceful state. And you will agree with me that Bayelsa, in current day, relatively in Nigeria, is one of the most peaceful states. And I want to see a Bayelsa that will key in to our agenda of prosperity. And Bayelsans have started keying in to the prosperity agenda. And so we are bringing in prosperity, prosperity in spirit, in soul, prosperity in material wealth. And so for us as a government, we would like to, at this point, harness the resources of the state, the resources both human and material, to ensure that our agenda of prosperity is carried on to the end. I'm very sure that by next year, when we will be 2 years, some of you will come on board to see exactly what I mean. Timelines, yes, very good, but sometimes are not feasible because nobody has control of what tomorrow is bringing for us. Just as we didn't know about COVID-19 last year, and COVID-19 came in, our economy went down, downturn in the economy, and everything was affected. So for me, I believe that by next year, when we will hit 2 years, we will showcase what we have done for our state.
All right, then, Your Excellency Doye Diri, Governor of Bayelsa State, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Chamberlain, and thank you, viewers.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some feedback coming through from people. Which do we have first? Do we? No way. We usually do. We should.
Well,
shouldn't we?
We clearly do.
Yeah.
A lot of them, by the way.
Yeah, let me just believe that. We'll see one or two right on the screen right away.
Believe that?
Yes, I mean, we have to believe. That's faith. I mean, you just heard the governor.
Okay, not politician.
I think Lagunju is first with this
there
one.
You go. Nice.
And it's on Electoral Act. Olagunju Oladele says, several mechanisms for improving democracy have been suggested, most of which involve making it even more transparent. Everyone understands that democracy is not perfect, even in most developed nations. However, the electoral laws should help protect the process. We have seen courts overturn some results, political malpractices, and he says he's yet to see anyone being prosecuted for election fraud. I recall the chairman of the INEC speaking regarding that, referenced the recent conviction that they had. Ends by saying, are there laws to prosecute political parties and players for malpractice? Big question there.
And, you know, if you look at those amendments, which they say was strange, about 20 of those provisions, you see these concerns that Nigerians are raising are huge there. They get the impression from that context of the whole of that 20, that some people just want to go somewhere and write certain results without those safety nets, those checks and balances, wherein power, they say, lies with the people. In a democracy, it does lie with the people. Should lie, it should remain there. So that's it. Look at this next one. Anyway.
Well, yes, that's Oseni Job, who is saying the truth on the same matter. The truth remains that what is worth doing at all is worth doing well. We need to take the bull by the horn to just hit the hammer on the nail. Let this take effect immediately. That's talking about transfer of elections electronically. However, but please, let's save ourselves from unnecessary election violence as a result of rigging.
What about Demola Lalade? Do we have that? Is this? All right, there you go. He says the Electoral Act Amendment Bill that will change the electoral process of the country seems to be compromised again. The leadership of the National Assembly must ensure the Electoral Amendment Bill is properly effected and must represent the wishes of Nigerians. And then Kenneth comes through.
We got there. Comrade Dare talking about Southern Governor's Resolution, says the Southern Governor's Resolution is a welcome development. But again, Southern President is really not what we need as a nation, but qualified individuals in the affairs of governance. Until our electioneering process is more transparent, in order for citizens of this nation to elect their choice of leaders into political office, tribe or region in power will not change anything. Therefore, it's time we do away with primordial sentiments as we position ourselves to elect credible leaders with mental capacity, he adds. I don't know why that was important. A number of them, there's Kenneth Anelichukwu, famous Timile. I think we can see a number. I don't know if we still have time. Do we? Maybe we don't. Well, thank you so much for sending in your mails. Yes, you can see that from Kenneth Alechukwu. Hopefully, I'm always hoping against hope, even though my hope is yet to materialize, that we'll be able to take some more mails one day, someday. Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Mao Yusuf.
I hope so too as well. I'm Kayode Kikere.
When you talk about hope, one of the comments actually mentioned Hope 93. Amayo Makinde, have a wonderful day.
What can we do without hope or hoping in life?
Maybe someone's name.
I'm Chain Bellin, so we'll see you next time.